Good morning, and welcome to day 14 of our GMP Live feature. Today we're going to talk a little bit about an inspection program for contractors. I know that many of us are not there yet in terms of hiring out contractors or having other people do our work for us, but regardless, it is a section that is required within our GMP manuals, and so I decided I would leave it in and we would chat just a little bit about some of the things that we need to understand if we do decide to contract out to others. So what the reference material says for programs for contractors, what it states is manufacturers, packagers, labelers, and importers must ensure that activities contracted out to other sites meet the GMP requirements, which can be demonstrated by an inspection and or an evaluation of the contractor. This inspection program of contracted activities verifies that the GMP portion of the regulations is met by all parties at all times. It is essential to clearly establish and document the roles and responsibilities of each party involved in the contracted operations, and then it gets into some record keeping and documentation. So there are several different areas where we may choose to contract services out. They can include manufacturing, whereby we order a raw material from a contractor that we then get into our shop and we customize it and tweak it and package and label and ship it back out for sale. That's one way. Another way is to actually do the packaging and labeling, whereby we send a lot of our product to a company and they then further package and label and send it out for distribution. And there's several different ways that we can work with contractors. We can have a contractor into our home who is going to follow our setup and our manufacturing processes to make stuff alongside of us. In any situation, though, we do require that our contractors meet GMP requirements as outlined by the Natural Health Products Regulations and the Cosmetic Regulations. So in order to meet that qualification, some of the references here that talk about supporting evidence include an approved finished product spec for all products manufactured, packaged, labeled, and stored at the site. And so we would have a checklist, basically, and it would be a product specification checklist. At the top of that would be the name of the contractor and what their responsibility and their portion of the production and distribution, what that responsibility looks like. Then our QAP person would go in, review that this person contracted to so-and-so meets this requirement, this requirement, this requirement, and sign off on it. So then we would ensure that they have met all finished product specifications. Another way in which we can incorporate this is to have a very clear master production document and a very clear finished product specification sheet that we train any contractors on. So if we're having a contractor come in and work for us, it is our requirement to make sure that these people working for us and doing things for us are properly trained in good manufacturing practices. Another way in which we can ensure that we are providing proper inspection programs for contractors is by providing certificates of analysis to our contractors. So, when you order raw material and you get an MSDS sheet or a COA or a GCMS, depending on what type of raw material you're working with, that a copy of all of those records of the raw material specs should be included in the package you present to your contractor so that they are aware of what every raw material should look like, smell like, feel like, etc., etc. So we are all on the same very clear page about product specifications. Additionally, we can complete a finished product test. There's lots of ways to do that. One of the ways that I personally utilize is dip slides. A dip slide can check for bacteria as well as for yeast and mold, and it is a simple test that you can do right within your own workspace that doesn't have to be sent off to a lab. It's pretty straightforward and simple, It comes in a little, well, it's a sealed package then basically, and we would then take a swab, a sealed swab, and open it up and take a swab of whatever material we're working with and put it on one side of the dip slide and on the other side for the yeast and the mold. And then it goes back into a little test tube, and then this test tube goes into a small incubator for 24 to 48 hours. And then what it populates out in terms of results and what that slide looks like after the incubation period will identify if there's any concerns for bacteria, yeast, or mold. Now, if we're having people make stuff off-site and we're contracting that out, it's doubly important because we are not there to verify their process, even though we may have taught them and trained them that this is our process. Nobody is standing there looking over their shoulder verifying that they are indeed following our processes. And so at that point, it's even more important to do your own stability testing within your own environment after you get that product back. Additionally, a raw material release record, that's very similar to what we talked about before, where we're getting all of our inventory in, we're recording exactly what our inventory is, and then as we release raw ingredients out to a contractor to make our product, we would then have to sign those out and work with him or her to ensure that they are taking the right materials and using the right materials, and keeping the quality as high quality as we can in terms of ensuring that our raw materials meet and match our specifications. Again, records for out of specification results. So if we receive product back from a contract manufacturer and that product is not exactly as we want it to be, what are we doing about it? What records are we keeping? So we're going to keep a record for when we receive our product back. We're going to keep a record of our assessment of the product and whether it's going to be accepted, rejected, or quarantined. And then we are going to keep a record for out of specification results. And then we're going to further that by investigating what the root cause of that is, where the failure was within those out of spec results and what we're doing about it. Then of course we'll have our finished product release forms. So any product we get in from a contract manufacturer, after we review it and approve it and put it into our for sale inventory, we need to have a product release record. So we're releasing it either to a distribution or releasing it in terms of out of spec products that are in quarantine. We can either release it out of quarantine or we can enter it in for disposal. Now those records all need to be kept and kept up to date, obviously. And these are the things that provide evidence to Health Canada if ever they were to do an audit or any type of inspection on you. You having these records would be what they would be looking for. As well, in terms of product going out to market, we're going to keep a record of product complaints. So any product complaint that we receive from a client or from a vendor partner that we are working with, we would have to record any complaints at all about the product. And then the product disposition, distribution, oh, I can't talk, disposition, distribution, and disposal of products. So we need logs and records for those. So the disposition, the distribution, well, we already talked about the disposition, receiving it back in from a contract manufacturer, putting it back into our operating inventory. We do need to keep the same for distribution records. So when we're sending it out to various vendor partners, where is it going? How are we recording that? And then, of course, the disposal logs and records, like I had mentioned, in terms of quarantined items, if they are not brought back into our inventory, how are we disposing of them? And are we recording it? So then we also need a list and copy of all SOPs used in production and importation. So SOPs are standard operating procedures. Bear with me a moment. Oh, SOPs are standard operating procedures, and you have two sets of manuals. You have your standard operating procedure manual, and then you have your good manufacturing practices manual. So the standard operating procedures manual outlines all of our various processes for operations of the company as a whole. The good manufacturing practices outlines our good manufacturing practices for our actual products. The two go hand in hand. So for every section within the good manufacturing practices, you will also have a section within your standard operating procedures that works alongside. They're linked. And so you will need to have a list and copies of all of your standard operating procedures that are used in production. So anything to do with manufacturing, anything to do with contract manufacturing, anything to do with hiring contractors to work in-house with you. We do need reports of all of those, or not reports, sorry, records of all of those. And then we get into audit reports and completed reports for approved contractors. So how did we approve our contractors? What was the process? Did we do an interview process? Did we inspect their facilities? Did we look at some of their previous work that they've done for a client? Did they offer to do a sample for us so that we can see their operations and how they work? These things need to be recorded, and we need to have a process by which we either approve or disapprove of a contractor to work with our company. And then again, all relevant SOPs and associated blank record templates related to any and all operations. So those we've been talking about this whole time. The relevant SOPs are the company processes to get you to manufacturing, and then the records will be the record keeping as part of your good manufacturing practices that link the SOPs and the GMPs. So I know there's a lot of acronyms and there's a lot of information to try and take in. It's not actually as overwhelming as it seems. Like, I mean, if you were to sit down with somebody and talk to them and be like, look, I have all these orders coming in, I can't keep up with it myself. I would really like to get you in to help me with this. I'm going to hire you to work as a contractor in-house alongside me. What would be the questions you would ask them? How would you decide on the right individual, I guess, for the job? Would they have to have experience? Would you teach them and train them? Would you give them a probationary period? All of these things, they become part of your contract records. And so these are things I think that we all do or would do in this position regardless. However, because it's all written down in such a legal way in the regulations, I think it's a little daunting perhaps, but I can tell you most definitely it's no different than you asking me what my experience is if you are going to hire me to help make your products. And so these are the things, but we need to actually put these things down on paper. You know, maybe do some role playing. Maybe sit down with your friend, your husband, your wife, your child, and sit there and pretend that you were going to hire them to work for you. What are the questions you would ask them? Just write them down and create that record. And then as soon as that record is created, it can then become part of your good manufacturing practices, and likewise part of your standard operating practices or procedures. So it's none of it is as big and scary as it seems. It really is a lot in the wording because most of it is common sense things that we would be doing anyhow to ensure the safety, efficacy, and quality of our products that we are making and putting out to the Canadian public. So that is all for today. Drop your questions and comments down below. Wishing all of you a very safe and enjoyable September long weekend, and we will catch up with you guys on Monday for our next GMP Live. Or sorry, not Monday. Monday's a holiday. Tuesday. We'll catch up with you Tuesday for our next GMP Live. Have a great day, everyone. Talk to you soon.